Did it die? Do I need some more batteries?
We're good.
Looks like a red light. Okay, so if you're just joining us on the video, pause the video and fill in your code so you get caught up. And then turn the video back on, and we'll all be together. So I was thinking about what we did last time on Milton's Island, and we have basically 4 symbols. And the symbols are, if you have a 1, if you have a 0, then it's a water symbol, which is a tilde. If you have a 1, it's a land symbol, which is, is a bridge symbol, which is a pound. And then if you have a 4, it's the land symbol, which we're using a period. Is that correct? And those are all the symbols, and then Milton is an M. So I started to think, well, we've got 0, 1, 4. What if I made a string array that held those symbols? So sub 0 is the tilde, sub 1 is a pound sign, 2 and 3 I don't care about, and 4 is going to be the period. Does that make sense? And then I can make it easier to fill in my map. At least that's what I was thinking. So I'm going to go ahead and create that array. And I called that icon $. And I dimensioned it to 4. Now remember, when I dimensioned it to 4, I've got 0 plus 1 through 4. So I actually built an array of 5 by saying that. Because I have numbers 1 through 4, but I also have 0. And then I want to go ahead and set that up right away. So icon $sub 0, sub 0 is equal to, quote, tilde, icon $sub 1 is equal to hashtag, icon $sub 4 is equal to a period. I also needed to set up my Milton row and Milton column. So MR is equal to, let's start him out at 3 and 3. So Milton column is equal to 3 as well. Now notice in this case, when the variables are similar or similar content, I'm going to go ahead and drop them into the same line. And part of this is just to keep my code a little tighter or more condensed. If you do too much of that, it gets hard to read. So how do I kind of decide when I'm going to put a couple of lines on one line and when I'm not, or a couple of commands on one line? Basically, if the commands are very related, I might be tempted to do that. So like when I said icon sub 0, icon sub 1, icon sub 4, those guys were all related, so I was comfortable with that. Same with MR is equal to 3 and MC is equal to 3. Okay, I also need some variables for my loop. So remember, we had an alive Boolean, only we don't have Booleans anymore. And we had a trapped Boolean, and again, we don't have trapped Booleans. So instead of being able to set those to true, because I don't have a Boolean variable, I just set them to 1. You guys okay with that? So it serves the same purpose as the Boolean variable, except that I don't have a Boolean variable to work with. Now, I need to get my island array filled in. And here you're going to learn something new on how to load arrays in BASIC, and also about subroutines. So line 60, I'm going to say go sub, and I'm going to set that up at 800. Now, I need to explain what go sub does. So we do have functions in this BASIC, but we probably won't use any. But we'll use subroutines instead. And there's two things that are happening here that are super important. One is when you say go sub, you're jumping to that new line number, and it will continue to execute until it hits a return. And when it hits a return, it'll come back here. So in essence, it's acting like a function in Java. Does that make sense? So when you have a function call and you jump to the function and you do it, and then when you hit return, you come back where you left from. Does that make sense? So when we get down to 800, we're going to type our code to fill the island array, and then at the end of that, it'll say return, and that'll bring the program pointer back to here, and it will continue going down the program. Yes? Good? All right. However, what's different here is that we're still in the same function, if you want to call it that, because the program is one program. It just has subroutines. Which means that all of my variables are still in scope when I jump down to line 800. You guys comfortable with that? So I don't have to return a variable, and I don't have to worry about passing variables, because all my variables are in scope. They're global, meaning they're accessible to the whole program. So once I create them, the whole program can see them. By the way, when you're done running your program, if you type in like print z to see what the value of z is, it'll tell you, which is kind of cool. So when the program stops, you can like still print stuff out, or if it breaks, you can print stuff out and see what values you had and why it broke. All right, so I'm going to jump down to 800. Close enough. And I'm going to make a nice pretty header for my subroutine, so I know, like, oh, here's something new going on here. All right, and now we have something new. What line number did I use for this? I started at 880, and we're going to use data. So in Java and C#, when you create an array, you can put in braces all the numbers you want to go into the array. We don't have that option in BASIC. But what we do have is a data statement that allows us to say, here's some data, and then we can read that data into the array with a for loop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by creating the data, and then I'm going to go back into this gap right here and create the for loop that reads the data into my array. So in this case, the data looks like this: 0, 0, 3, 4, 5, 6. No comma at the end of the line. Well, 0, 4, 4, 4, 4, 0. Look out, that one's got the bridge: 1, comma 4, comma 4, comma 4, comma 4, comma 0. This one also has a bridge on the other side: 0, comma 4, comma 4, comma 4, comma 1. All right, is that making sense? So at this point, we're creating the data. If you look at your Java program of this, we did kind of the same thing, only we said the array is equal to this. And then we're inside braces, separated by commas. But now we have data, we have to read it into our array. So I'll give you a minute to type that. I am going to do list 800 dash, which will list everything starting at line 800. So I did list 800 dash so that your screen wasn't filled with extra junk. Okay, I'm going to do a for loop for r is equal to 1 to 6. And then right away, I'm going to do another one for, whoops, I'm going to indent. I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. C is equal to 1 to 6. Read, what should I call it? ISL, row, comma, column. So type this and then I'll explain what's happening. And I need to also check real quick if I use the right variable name. That's what I call the island. ISL. Very good. List 800 dash. Okay. Whoa. Clear screen list 800 dash. There we go. So what happens is that you've got this data listed here, and BASIC starts by pointing at the first one. So there's actually something in BASIC called the data pointer. And the data pointer looks through all your code until it finds a data keyword, and then it points at the first data element in that data keyword. And every time you hit a read, it reads what the data pointer is pointing at. So when I do read right here, it takes this number and puts it into that. And then it increments the data pointer automatically. So it'll now bump this to here, and then it'll do next C. C will turn into a 2. It'll read island 1, comma 2, which is this piece of data right here. Is that making sense? So every time you do a read, it's going to bump the little pointer 1 over. It's going to read the value, bump the pointer, and hold it. If you ever needed to reread the data, you could use the restore command. That would put the pointer back at the beginning. We won't need to do that, but I mean, just so you're aware that if you ever needed to do that, if you have a restore command, it would push the pointer back to the beginning of the data. Okay, so what this should do is it should jump down here, do 1 to 6, so row 1. This is row 1, column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Row 2, column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right? Are we good? And then when it's done, it's going to return. We don't have to pass anything back because everything's in scope. So once you build a variable, it's in scope for the whole program. So no worries about variable scope. Which could be a problem if you reuse a variable in one of your subroutines, so be aware of that too. Like you can't reuse variables. So now that I'm done with that, I can do like list through 799, and that'll show me, oh, I need to clear the screen, list through 700, and that way it'll keep the other stuff hidden. So because my program's starting to get big, I'm going to start saying list line number to line number, or line number through 100, or line number through 200, so that I don't have to look at all the stuff I just did. You guys good with that? Okay. Now, the next thing I want to do is print it out so we can see it, so go sub. And I'm going to use 600 for the printing it out. And out the island. So in Java, we made a function called print island or something like that printed our island out. We can't make a function with a name. But what we can do is make a subroutine. And we don't have to pass anything to the subroutine because the subroutine already knows what the island is and what's inside it. So now, just like I did for filling the island, I'm going to start with 600, whoops, 600, remark, make some of those. I guess I should do the words first. Print out array. Ooh, I got lucky. Aha! That was so lucky. 602, remark. 600 through 699. Okay, so line 610, I'm just going to do a print. Actually, I'm going to do two prints. Print. That'll give me two lines on the screen, so it's just going to give me two blank lines. And then 620 for R equals 1 to 6. So I'm starting up the for loop again. And now I have to check, because if Milton's row is equal to the row that I'm on, and Milton's column is equal to the column I'm on, then I need to print out the M for Milton. Otherwise, I want to print out what's in the map. So if Milton row is equal to row, and Milton column is equal to column, then, sorry, it's going to put those to little letters again, 635. Print an M with a semicolon, because I need the semicolon to keep the print head where it is. So if Milton's row is equal to the row we're looking at, and his column is equal to the column we're looking at, we're going to print out an M for Milton. Otherwise, print icon dollar sub island sub row comma column close close semicolon. Well, that looks halfway normal. Woo. So remember that the icon is this thing. So if the island sub row comma column is a 1, it's going to print the hashtag. If it's a 0, it's going to print. Does that make sense? 650, I'm going to end that. So 650, we're going to say end if. And now I need to start closing up my loops. So 655, next C. 660, we're going to print to start a new row. 665, next R, and 670 will be returned. I will leave that up there for a minute. So the really confusing part is line 645. I think that'll make sense if you think it through. The island is a matrix. Each cell of that matrix has 0s, 1s, or 4s. So if you replace island sub R sub C with the number 0, 1, or 4, you would see that you're printing out one of those, hopefully, if everything is typed correctly. By the way, what happens if you run it? Return without go sub. Oh, bad. Why did we get a return without go sub in line 670? What happens after it goes sub 600 and returns? What does it do next? The next line of the program. What is the next line of the program? Line 600. So it's going to hit a return and not know what to do. By the way, how many of you had data structures? Okay. Fun fact. Every time you say go sub, you put the location that you go subbed from into a stack. It's called the call stack. So when you say return, it gets the memory address that had the last command off of the stack and jumps to that memory address. So what happened is we had an empty stack, and the basic I learned on, you actually got a call stack empty here. which was like, this is much more readable. You never knew that data structures would be so important. The rest of you that didn't have it, don't worry about it. We'll torture you with that later, unless you're MIS. Pardon?
Nothing.
It's better than a tree, right? It's just a stack. Do you need a garbage can there, Kira?
Yeah.
So you can throw up?
Remember when you told us to make a tree and I submitted a paint drawing of a tree?
This is the best I can do.
I also submitted a tree.
Yes, you did submit a tree. That's fine. All right. So how do I stop this from being a problem? I'm going to put an end statement, which will stop the program. So I don't know how many lines I'm going to use, so I'm just going to guess that like maybe 499 will put end. And what will happen is now if I run it, it'll get to that and it'll stop. So if you're running yours, are you getting a little island printing out?
No.
Is that working?
Mine just says bad subscript in line 830.
Mine too. Mine too.
I've got it in 60.
Let's look at...
It doesn't go. It doesn't even go up. It's like, nope, it's not going anywhere.
Okay, so let's look at the 800s. Check your code against mine. Also check your data. Make sure you don't have any commas at the end of each data line.
I fixed one of them and now it's giving me a different one.
Okay, did you find yours, Kara?
Nope. What did you fix?
Well, it's because I named... You named your island array ISL and I named it island.
Which is fine.
I
You can
spelled it out
name
completely,
it.
but I typed it incorrectly.
Okay. Anyone else stuck? Yeah, so check where you built the array and see what it looks like.
Mine doesn't like go
Yours is ideal. Line
Oh,
30.
I spelled it wrong.
So just redo line 30. You have to like get to the bottom of your code or something.
Mine just ends at goes up.
There we go, I got it.
Undefined line in line 60. Go sub 800. So do list. Where's 800? Okay, so you need a line 800 even if it's just a remark. Just say 800 REM. I'll run it and see if it does that, okay. There you go.
There we go.
Yeah.
It'll be fun.
So yours works now?
Yes.
Maybe? Question? No? Okay. All right. So now that we have that working, whoops, 600. We have that working. 200. I can go back and work on the game loop itself. So I'm back to the top, and I did list through 200 so that it didn't show me all those subroutines that are done. Okay? And that's what, as you start building stuff in a language like this, you start to designate line number ranges for things. So as I built larger and larger programs in BASIC, I started to use the 700s and the 800s and the 900s for subroutines, so that I could just ignore them after they were done and they were working. Does that make sense? So I tried to do all my introduction of variables in the first 100 lines. My main program was like 200 to 400, and then subroutines down below. So, and then you have to decide, like if it's a small program you can use 10s, if it's a large program you might have to jump by 5s, or you might get into the 1000s and 1100s and 1200s if you need to. So you can have really big line numbers. Alright, so now we're ready to build our game loop. I'm going to start that at 100. I like using little symbols like hashtags and asterisks and tildes to make some of my comments stand out, so that as you're scrolling through the code, things will jump out at you and you're like, oh, look, what is that? What's going on there? While trapped equals 1 and alive equals 1. Okay, so this is the same as we did in Java, except in Java we used booleans. So it was while trapped, ampersand, ampersand, alive. Or not ampersand. Yeah, it was ampersand. Alright. Now I need to roll a direction. Direction equals R&D of 4 plus 1. Tempted to do something here, but I probably shouldn't. So, 130. If direction equals 1, then Milton's row is equal to Milton's row plus 1. If direction equals 3, then Milton's row equals Milton's row minus 1. By the way, could I have done this with else's and else ifs? Well, I don't have an else if. But could I have done that with else's? And the answer is yes, I could. Why didn't I care if I used an else or not? Because if the first one was true, none of the other ones were going to be true. Does that make sense? So I didn't really need an else there. If direction was 1, then it wasn't going to be 3, 2, or 4. So don't feel like you always have to use an else. In this case, I felt like it was more efficient to just type each if with a then right on the same line. Like that's pretty readable. Let's add one to steps. So there's my accumulator. Steps is equal to steps plus 1, so we're keeping track of how many steps he takes. Let's print the world. So go sub 600. By the way, I didn't have to put the remark there, but because my go sub doesn't tell me what 600 does, I like to remark my code when I go sub. Does that make sense? Again, you guys aren't going to be coding much in BASIC after. You might not ever code in BASIC after this coming week, and that might be a good thing. Like, I'm okay with that. But you kind of see where there were some best practices, like, oh, if you're going to go somewhere, go somewhere, print out why, or leave a little tag behind what's going to happen there, so that people, when they read your code, they know what's going on when you just jump off somewhere else in the code. If island of Milton's row and Milton's column is equal to 0, then alive is equal to 0. So if you got a 0, then he stepped off the map. He is no longer alive. And by the same token, if the island of his row and column is equal to a 1, then trapped is equal to 0 because he's no longer trapped. So he's either going to step on a 0 or a 1 at some point, and he'll either be dead or alive, or he'll no longer be trapped. And by the way, this is what triggers our escape from the loop. So if either of these is true, this is no longer true, it drops out of our loop. Now it goes really fast if we don't do this. So I just had it come up. Otherwise, it'll go, but it'll just like scroll up, and then you won't see what's going on. So I just had to press enter inside my loop, so every time he moves, you have to hit enter, and that way you can see Milton moving around, because otherwise it's just way too fast. I did not figure out how to put a delay into this game. I have done delays in BASIC before where I just like counted to 1,000,000 or counted to 100,000. So that the computer would be busy for a while, so that it would slow the thing down. All right, because there isn't like a sleep command like you have in Java. So you can do things. You can, I don't know, get the square root of six really large numbers, or there are things that you can do to slow it down. I don't know if it's good for the CPU to just be burning up cycles, calculating stupid stuff, but it's kind of wasteful. Okay, so we're done with the loop. So I can do my wend. Is wend an actual word in English? Like the stream wended its way through the... I think it is a word.
Yeah, it is.
Does it mean like to wind or pass through, or?
It means to go in a specified direction, typically slowly or in an indirect route.
Perfect.
We're going to wend on over to Alpha for lunch.
Wend on over to Alpha via the library. Okay. So we've now escaped from the loop. If alive is equal to 1, then $result, oops, sorry, it's result $, PHP. I'm going to do that all in one row. Hang on. I don't know if that'll work or not.
CLS, not CLS.
Ah. I was looking at it like, what's wrong? I just... Okay, you could break that up and make it cleaner. If you like a one-line else, if else then, if then else, you can also do it that way, I think. If we get a syntax error, we'll know what happened. 220, print, Milton took, semicolon, steps before he, semicolon, results $. So basically, I just used my my if statement here to set the result to either he escaped or he drowned, and then we just print the right word in the final. And if I run it, he took a step, took another step, and then he died. Okay. And then he died. And then he died. And then he died. And then he died. Will he ever survive?
No.
Come on, Milton. Ah! So close! Come on! Ah! "16 steps and he still couldn't make his way off. Did anybody make it out? Yay, there he goes. Woohoo! Okay. Let's do save Milton. Let me know if you need me to display some line numbers up there. Like a range of lines. Now, the question becomes, do you think you have what you need to do Codebreaker? We won't know until Sunday night, Monday afternoon, when you start working on it. Tomorrow? What do you guys think? Oh, it's 10:12. I think last week I let you out like an hour early. Is that correct? You don't want to admit that I did that.
It's 40 minutes.
Tonight it's like right on time. So, but this is weird. Like BASIC is weird compared to C#. If you started in Java, and some of you have done C#, so doing C#, you're like, hey, yeah, this is old hat. I can do this. Like 4/6 of you were in data structures, so you were doing harder stuff than this in C#. So, like, oh, that's easy. This will push you a little bit. Save early, save often. After you've gone for 20 or 30 minutes, you might save it as a different name so that you have versions to go back to in case something bad happens. Does that make sense? So, like, save it as Codebreaker codebreaker 01, and then after 20 to 30 minutes, save it as codebreaker 02, codebreaker 03, so that as you're working through it, if something horrible happens and you whack your code or really mess it up, then you can go back to where you were 15 minutes ago or 20 minutes ago. Questions, thoughts? It's good. I'm going to be really impressed if you guys get through this. Okay, so next week we're going to start on Python, which I've been looking forward to the whole session so far. Actually, I was looking forward to this too. But next week we're going to start Python. I'm probably going to spend some extra time on Python because it's important. Everything I'm reading says that the top languages right now are JavaScript, Python, Java, C#. And I'm feeling like a lot of you will have all of those if we can do something in Python. So having all those on your resume is probably a good thing. Okay? So that's, I'm going to spend a little extra time on Python, and then, how many weeks are left? Not many. Semester's flying by. I think we have 5 weeks left. 4? 5-ish. 5-ish. I'm leaning toward no test and just having some kind of project.
That would be cool. We have 5 more classes.
5 more? So what I'm leaning toward right now is we spend 2 weeks learning Python, and then we build something in Python. Okay? So between now and next week, if you could download the most current version of Python, and there's a Python editor called Idle, IDLE. Idle is kind of like this as an environment, meaning you can type code and then hit go and it'll just run right out of that environment, kind of like what we're doing here. The difference is that in Idle you can scroll back up and type over stuff and fix it. So it's a lot more natural than what we're doing now, where you have to type a line number, and there are no line numbers in Python. When we get to Python, what will be interesting is indentions matter. So the people who wrote Python were like, gosh dang it, we're going to make sure that all of our coders make pretty code. So when you do an if structure, what controls where it starts and ends is the indentation. I love it. Like, what a great idea. So there's no little brace, it's just an indentation. Okay? Which is a good reason maybe to start with Python and intro, because then everyone would have to indent properly when they got started. Anyhow, that's the plan. So see if you can build Codebreaker and also get Python loaded so that we can start playing with Python next week. Yes?
This is unrelated, but database we have no homework because we have a test next time.
Yes, that's correct. There's no homework for database, just a test on Thursday that I haven't read yet. But I've got all day Tuesday, Wednesday to do that. So, how do you guys feel about BASIC? Be honest. It's for posterity, so be honest.
It's fun. It's awful, but it's fun.
It's a new kind of torture. If I was going to compare them, I would say that like for loops are better, but that some of the other stuff isn't.
There's some things I wish we could steal and put into C#.
Yeah. Now you can actually do Visual Basic with the Microsoft Editor, and that you can take all the C# objects and bring them into Visual Basic.
Visual Basic is so much better than this.
Did you use Visual Basic already?
Like my senior year in high school a little bit. Because I look at it now and I'm like, how did that make any sense?
I could do like something short next week in Visual Basic just so you can see it. It's so much better than this because it's still basic, but it's
better.
it's much better because it's a modern editor and a modern environment, and you're not.
You can actually see what you create.
Yeah, it's much better as far as the environment. So, but it is compiled, so it runs a lot like C#, and a lot of the stuff looks like C# because they both compile to the same output. Like you can actually take C#, compile it to intermediate code, and then decompile it back to Visual Basic, or vice versa, which is kind of weird. Reverse engineering to another language. All right, you guys are dismissed. Welcome back.